The following announcement has been paid for by the
Mark Order.
Welcome to the Elite Mark Order podcast, where we talk about all things AEW related, and tonight we're going to talk about AEW Dynamite from November 1st, 2023, and some other stuff. I've got a PhD in THC. I'm the Doctor of Pot, CosmicScott, and I'm joined by my partner and co-host, who is currently scissoring me as we speak, JayV. How are you tonight, JayV?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the MJF show review, because AEW Dynamite is all about MJF.
Well, and the ratings absolutely reflect the fact that really he's their big draw. That's it. They have consistent ratings otherwise. They spike when he's on TV. That's it. Now, They may not draw a wonderful number from week to week, but every week he spikes. That's all I can say about the MJF show, because without him, they are going to have issues. So let's hope he stays healthy.
Yeah, he definitely needs to stay healthy since they're feeding him most of the roster. Although I can't say that after tonight because he took the big L.
I was really fucking surprised that they had him pinned for story.
Right. Well, I think it helps make Jay White a more credible challenger, which was definitely an issue. I mean, you just had MJF go over Omega, and he'd been going over tag teams and going over everyone else in handicap matches in tag teams. He was beating tag teams in handicap. So I think doing this makes the fact that he could lose a little more believable and makes the main event more interesting at the pay-per-view.
So realistically, you're saying that it's a good thing they pinned the champion in the main event, even though it was only a tag team, because he got the pin. It's good. I have difficulty with that. A visual pin. He gets the ref bump. He gets the visual, I got to pin the champion, but MJF still ends up winning. I don't know. I hear your logic. I respect that logic. That's clearly what they're going with. I just don't know if I ever agree with pinning your world champion. I never agreed with it when they did it with any of the other titles. Pinning your champion for any reason should be a big deal. Are they trying to say that the Ass Boys and the Bullet Club rejects are a big deal?
Yeah, they're trying to build up the Bullet Club stable, and basically the main event of the next pay-per-view is a New Japan guy with a new faction. So I don't think it hurts to build that up at all. When the show starts and the Bullet Club music hits, there's a pop. So people are starting to get back into it. I think the faction is starting to have some consistency and maybe start establishing a real brand in AEW. And we'll see where they go with it. But I don't expect Jay White to beat MJF at Full Gear. But I guess it wouldn't be too surprising. We'll see what happens. I think it's all setting up for MJF to lose the title right before, at the end of the World pay-per-view that they're doing in December. Last night. Yeah, World's End. I think MJF is going to lose there against who? I don't know, since he has, 5 different challengers right now.
We counted 8 last week, 8 different threads, so I can't imagine there's any less as of yet. But I do agree with you. If he's going to lose it, he's broken the records. He's got 1 million people following him. He doesn't have Adam for support. There's a lot of build for the fact that maybe Jay White is the one to take it. They've been showing him holding the belt for how many weeks now? Like a month? So to me, it sounds like there's a build for it. Maybe it is finally time. Do I necessarily agree that it should be Jay White to take the title? That's hard to swallow. Who else could they put it on? Could you conceive of anybody on the roster to put that on other than Jay White right now? Any of the threads?
Well, the challengers, you got Wardlow. I don't see Wardlow being given the title. You have You know, I thought it was going to be Adam Cole. Like, I thought for sure it was going to be Adam Cole, but I mean, if he just had surgery, he could be out for another 6 months. Um,
Except
so
real injuries like Daniel Bryan, they're done. They get it dealt with. They're not on television. You don't hear from them every week. You don't see them in video packages. What is up with his actual injury status? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Adam Cole?
Yeah.
You know, they did show the mask again tonight. They did show the guy in the mask. I'm assuming that he's hurt for real. Like, I would be shocked at this point if he's not. It would be the greatest work ever. So I would expect him to be out for a considerable period of time.
Well, he legitimately looked like he had some sort of surgery, like he was in a recovery room. They did have him when it looked like he was in a hospital. So, and they had it tight. They had it on a phone. They made it as legit looking as possible. Yes, it could absolutely be real. Could it have taken, say, a couple of weeks before they got the actual surgery done? That seems strange that a professional athlete with a billion-dollar company, or at least owner, behind him couldn't get medical attention immediately. So
I mean, you're right. That could definitely be the case. He could have had the surgery a couple weeks ago, and they
Right.
filmed clips. Like,
Right.
I mean, they could fuck with it however they want, because we don't know what's going on for real. So, and then there are situations where, if you do break a bone, you can't have surgery right away. You have to wait for the swelling to go down. There might be other complications. They might want to set it first and see if the set holds. I mean, I don't know. I just there are reasons why surgery could be delayed, and just based on how Cole was walking after, he messed up his ankle. It looked pretty bad. So
I'm not, I as a person who's had ankle issues, I will tell you that when he got the little scooter thing with his knee where it had that, I wish I had that a million times. Oh my God, I can't tell you the number of times I wish I had that instead of a cane or crutches or whatever I was trying to use. My goodness, that thing was cool as hell. But realistically, he could have had it done immediately. It could have waited. The big thing, I think, is that they're way underselling or way overselling what the actual injury was. I think he was injured. I don't think it was as bad as they're making it. And I think this is his recovery time. You know what I mean?
right.
So that's the only thing that makes sense as to why he's still been on TV and still really active. And somebody like Bryan Danielson, where it's legitimately going to take him out of action, he's done. He's out. And Bryan Danielson is somebody you want on television. So,
Right.
he can do so much more other than just wrestle. So,
Did you watch the clip of Danielson to see what happened? I haven't gone back
no, I
to
haven't.
see if okay.
But again, I haven't heard anything, but it's legit. And again, he was in the ring with Okada, the guy who broke his arm.
Well, I mean, I guess you could say that.
It legitimately is who it was and who it happened against. But, is this just another freak accident? Is this somebody who's maybe trying to, I don't know. It's weird, and nobody wants it. And if he's out until the end of the year, thank God it's only the end of the year.
Do you think there's any chance Orange broke it? With the punch. I find that hard to believe
It's
that he
such a
fucked that
worked
up.
punch.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to hit him with just the weakest of hands. His grip just at the last moment, just lightens up, and he hits him with barely anything. So there's just no way that unless he just fucked it up, which I guess could have happened, but
Yeah, you think of all the punches Orange given that he would break Daniel Bryan's face just seems unlikely.
and you think
Okada,
and
Okada.
think about the elbow versus just a regular punch breaking somebody's orbital bone. It's a lot harder to do with the punch than an elbow, that's for sure.
Right.
And a stray elbow, I mean, yeah, you stray elbow, you hit him in the head, bam, broken. So, yeah, it was clearly an accident. I don't think anybody did it on purpose, but I'm pretty sure it was Okada's elbow. And
Well, did Okada use an elbow? I thought Okada hit the Rainmaker, which is a standing clothesline.
I thought it was a standing short arm elbow, sort of like the Judas effect, but just...
I mean, the Rainmaker is just a clothesline. Again, I haven't gone back and watched it, so I can't say for sure, but
I thought he hit him with an elbow, and maybe that's why I keep thinking the Rainmaker was an elbow, because I don't see it a whole lot. The Demon Cat is actually playing here in the background with her.
Okay.
She's not playing with any of the other cats, but she's making noises. So if you hear something weird, it's probably just Kit Kat in her demon form.
Okay. All right.
So the most interesting segments throughout the night were MJF, to say the least. It was him looking for his partners for later on for the match where he ultimately lost. And I think it was interesting enough that he was able to have multiple segments with multiple people. The thing with Jericho was, okay, kind of weird, and then I realized they were teaming, so of course he'd be there. They had an actual interaction on camera on Dynamite with Kenny and the Bucks. And surprise, surprise, it was turmoil. Because they can't ever actually be a team, apparently.
Right.
And then the Bucks, they lost their trios match with Hangman against the Gates of Agony, who they won it from originally. So what the fuck was the point of that title run? It involves Swerve, so yeah, good. I don't know. Let's talk about that match a little bit. What did you think about? Obviously, the Bucks losing is never good for an elite mark, who's the mark for the elites. Let's start there. But what did you think overall? I thought it wasn't a terrible match, but what do you think was the reason they even had the titles to begin with if they just lose it again?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of resent the fact that, when Omega returned from his injury, he was put right into trios, and that's apparently what the Elite wanted to do. They wanted to go into trios. I still wonder if that's the case. I mean, I guess I wouldn't doubt it. They thought they could escalate the trios division, and that it would draw good ratings going against the Death Triangle. So
the best of 7 wasn't terrible. I'll give them that.
No, the best of 7 was awesome wrestling, but it was just kind of too much of the same. It was this. I mean, they did mix it up as best as these guys could, but I mean, 7 weeks of 7 different matches is a lot. Even though it is trios, and it was just kind of like, we had the Bucks had already had epic matches against
the Lucha Brothers,
Penta and the Lucha Brothers. Like, you could only have the same match so many times before it loses steam. It loses momentum.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just them putting the Bucks and Hangman into the trios, the Hung Bucks. I don't know. It's just like, it didn't work before. Why is it going to work now, swapping out Kenny with Hangman? So give them the ROH titles. People don't want ROH titles on AEW. The whole thing just didn't make sense to me. And I guess it's where it furthers the angle with Hangman and Swerve. That's fine. Hangman versus the Mogul Embassy. That's fine. At least there wasn't a home invasion this week.
Yeah.
So I see where they're going with it. I just think they could be doing other stuff.
Here's the thing. I like the Young Bucks. We've talked about it many times. This is my introduction to them technically. I was aware of them, but I had never really watched their matches. I enjoy what they do as a tag team. To me, it's new, even if it does kind of seem same old, same old. They've mixed things up a little bit, but, they have great chemistry with Hangman. We know that they're a great team with Kenny and Hangman. And the whole reason the Elite exist is because of that chemistry. And they want to build things, and they want to build. Their original idea was to build Hangman, and they were successful at it. But where does he go now? There's a lot of that going around. Is where does he go now? And I know we talked about it in the chat a little bit. I want to bring up the fact that I think Tony is starting to wear himself thin. He's really got to look at the fact that he's got 2 shows, plus his pay-per-views, plus ROH, and any of his other duties with his English football, his American football, all of that stuff. Is he running himself too thin at this point? Is enough? Maybe he should concentrate on something? Is that the problem?
Yeah, I think he does have a ton going on. Football season has started. And it's like you look at the stuff he's doing with MJF right now, it's brilliant. It's great. Like they're doing a lot of cool stuff to keep it fresh and interesting. I was saying in the chat before the show how, people were complaining that MJF's run was getting stale. His thing with Adam Cole was getting a little stale. And, Adam Cole got hurt, so it threw a wrench in things. Normally, Tony just puts everything at a screeching halt and does like squash matches with people when
champions especially.
Yeah. Right, like they did with Jade.
Wardlow.
Yep. So where was I going with this?
It's fresh because it's MJF is actually getting his own input.
Right, but yeah, your question was, is Tony running out of steam? I don't know. It just seems like MJF has so much freedom to book whatever the hell he wants to do. Or, I don't know how much input Tony's having into all of these 7 angles MJF has. You look at the rest of the roster, and it's just the same old shit. Oh, there's a run-in, or there's interference, or, they beat each other up backstage somewhere, and everything's pretty much the same. And so you get to MJF, and now you have all these intricate storylines and everything. So, I don't know.
They bring in Adam Copeland. And he's definitely a star. He's got a little bit of a drawing power. They put him up against his lifelong partner in Christian. That should have some conflict. We've all seen it, but this is at least a little bit new. But there's a spark that's missing. There was a spark that they had before Punk showed up. Even after he showed up, obviously after he showed up, there was a huge explosion. Everybody thought AEW was the shit, the place to be. It was on fire. And then, Punk took a couple of broadsides to it. We won't talk about that. But There was a time when it was really starting to get some momentum. And what happened, obviously Punk, etc., the backstage issues, the expansions, he started 2 new shows. Rampage, which barely exists. They put on some good matches when he tries. There's some excellent stuff. They put on some storytelling. I think Tony Storm started Timeless Tony Storm on Rampage. There was that kind of stuff. But, Robert from the chat had a great idea. He's like, give all of the booking to somebody in ROH. Let somebody else handle ROH. Give them a team. Give them an actual roster of wrestlers, however big or small, and let them do their thing. Now, he also said something about assistants helping run some of the shows. I think he's already got that in place. I know that people like Danielson are basically his go-to for running everything. He said that publicly. So behind the scenes, he must have a lot of faith and power in Bryan Danielson, even though he's out hurt. Behind the scenes, he's still a linchpin, giving ideas.
Khan did say that if something happened to himself, like if something happened to Tony Khan, he said, give the booking to Bryan Danielson, and he'll keep everything running just fine. So he does have a lot of faith in Danielson, and I think that's what we've seen on Collision. So,
and that's really kind of what I was saying is Collision is a little fresher. It does have slightly more interesting angles, like Miro. The Guns they actually started to cut their teeth and get a little bit of popularity along with Jay White on Collision. It's almost like there's a shift, even though it's not getting the same views right now, because somebody different is booking it, it's creating competition within the same company. And that's not bad. Tony has to respond, or he has to hire somebody. He has to put somebody in place who's going to then take the book and try to counter against Danielson using the same pieces and build a better show. And I think ultimately that will be when AEW starts to get that spark again, because right now it's definitely lopsided, because Collision, even though it doesn't get the viewing love of the ratings audience that the Nelsons measure, it's definitely getting the love of the hardcore AEW audience because it's much more interesting. I attribute that to Danielson. I attribute all of the progression Jade had while she was in AEW to Danielson and working with him. I give him all the props. I've seen a lot of backstage stuff with him. He doesn't have anything but wrestling. His life is wrestling. He's lucky he found a wife because she was a wrestler. He would never have found a wife otherwise.
Right. Yep.
So, speaking of Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli faced Orange Cassidy in a fairly good match at the International title. Cassidy didn't get the same response that he was in his last title championship. Do you think it's the title itself was damaged by the hot potatoing, or did Cassidy cool off because he had a semi-heel turn? The audience was there for MJF. The audience was there for a couple of other things, and certainly a few times during the match with Claudio. Claudio's fucking amazing, and he can throw Orange Cassidy around like a rag doll, so he can manipulate him anywhere midair, and they did some incredible spots. But other than that, it seemed like Orange Cassidy didn't get the big pop to start the show like I was sort of used to. Do you think he's cooled off?
I think that one of the reasons he was hot was because his reign was telling such a great story. His title run, it was this is the time. Is this the time he's going to lose? Is this the time he's going to lose? Like, they just kept building up his run, and when he did lose, I think it took a lot of wind out of the sails. Like, people just aren't as invested because he's not protecting that streak. He's not protecting that run anymore, and it's just like, oh, here we are. We're back at OC again. So I think Orange has definitely been overexposed during that run, and he needs some time, I think, to cool off, just give things a break. Because again, it's just too much of the same overexposure, where he fights a 2-segment match every single week, and the match has the same format most of the time. I just think we need to give Orange some time off or something. Let him heal up. Let him come back with something fresh, something to maybe reinvent himself a little bit.
That take reminds me a little bit about a common comment that people have about the show itself, about Dynamite, is its inability to breathe in the moment, to allow segments to breathe, to give it just that couple of, maybe 30 seconds or something to just settle and let the audience kind of process what just happened. A good example, one that I think is criminal, was when the SCU broke up. When Danielson and Kazarian lost that match and they were done as a tag team, there was just a moment where, if you considered SCU any sort of importance, they should have given it a second for that to settle in, for them to sell the realization they're no longer a team, to give the audience a chance to respond. Instead, they immediately went backstage and started something different. And it was almost jarring because of that emotional lack of time to process, to put it better. I think the pacing of the shows and now of the booking is starting to show a little bit of a lack of that patience that's required to build it up. Orange Cassidy took forever to build up to that giant, huge swell. You're right. Because when he started, that title wasn't even the international title. It was the All-Atlantic title. It had no respect. So
Right.
he did give some respect, but then they hot potatoed it. I think they lost whatever momentum the title had from his run. Moxley conceivably could have carried it, but I think Moxley's the wrong person for the international title championship. I think Moxley, as you've said, is also overexposed. I think this is another example of they're just trying to keep the most popular people on TV every week. And that's okay, but not 62, 63 weeks in a row. You know, not over a year straight. You know, not, there's been a long time that it's basically the same sort of group. AR Fox came back recently over on Collision. You know, there are these little additions to the roster that show up, but it's still basically the same people. It's still Christian and his orbiters. It's still, you know, Callis and his orbiters. So I think there is an opportunity to mix things up, but they're not. And that's keeping things from being fresh. They did a little segment with Sky Blue and Julia Hart. I thought that was kind of fun. Julia Hart had a tremendous amount of momentum because she was the mini taker. And you'd have thought her and Abaddon would have had a great little push coming up through spooky season and Halloween. But they really didn't do shit. So I'm just kind of let down a little bit right now by the show in general. I enjoyed the show overall because things like MJF. Because things like, you know, little Julia Hart stuff every now and again. It's just, I don't know. I think that there could absolutely be a lot better, I guess, booking. I guess booking is what it comes down to. Booking, pacing, there's just a whole lot that it just seems like the person making the decision is not as relaxed, maybe, as he was perhaps a couple of years ago. Do you think maybe it's the Adderall?
It might be.
Well, is there, I mean, I know you weren't super excited about the show itself. Is there, we talked about the most important segments, obviously. We talked about the women, Mogul Embassy,
Well,
Christian Cage.
the most important part is always Kenny Omega. And Omega had the tag match as the Golden Jets. I like their tag name instead of the Winnipeg Jets.
Right.
Why is everything golden? It's the Golden Jets.
I thought for sure it was going to be the Golden Wizards.
So they fought Parker and Menard, and it was a squash match.
It was an all-Canadian match.
It was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad match. It was probably the second worst Kenny Omega match on Dynamite in the history of the show. The worst one being his match against Joey Janela, where he talked on the microphone half the time. So yeah, it was a disappointing match. I thought, you know, Kenny did his Terminator dive. Jake Hager didn't really catch him, and it was almost like he powerbombed Kenny on the outside after that. So I mean, it just seems like how many more of those Terminator dives does Kenny have left when these guys aren't catching him? You know, so.
Yeah. That's an important point.
It's tough to watch, and yeah, I thought it was cool when you know, Callis came out with the crew and everybody, and you know, Jericho announced Paul White coming out. So it was great to see Paul White. I'm glad to see he's going to be used.
Yeah,
it's like we've been waiting for 3 years for him to be used. I know that White and Kenny have both said they wanted to face each other, so maybe we'll see a turn here, and we'll get that Kenny Omega versus Paul White match. I would love to see it. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, could you imagine Paul White with the Callis family? Paul White as the heater for somebody like Hobbs. Because there's,
Yeah,
I think that would be a really important way. Give a title to somebody like Hobbs or Takeshita, and then put Paul White in his corner. And there's really no legitimate reason to lose as long as Paul White can get one single punch in.
Right.
And every single match could be the same. It could be the one punch match. See, that's unfortunately the type of booking that they would do every time. But I think that having the threat of Paul should be sufficient for somebody like Hobbs to simply get an easy win or a distraction win or something just because he's standing outside and you turn your attention to him because he's a fucking giant. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not a booker. I didn't win 2021 Booker of the Year award like Tony Khan did. I don't know. Was it 2021? I think it might have been. That was like the height of AEW, right around the time.
He's won it 3 years in a row. He won it in 19. No, I think he's won it 4 years in a row. I think he won it in 1920. Maybe not 19 because he was late.
Yeah, it was October 2019, so it had to have been 2020.
So he won it in 2021, 22, 23. We're in 23 right now. So he's won it 3 years in a row. I don't think he should win it this year. WWE's Raw and SmackDown are drawing over 10,000 people to throw away, Monday night and Friday night shows without strong cards being booked, and people are just into the product. And it's like AEW isn't even selling 10,000 tickets for their pay-per-views. So to give Khan Booker of the Year, I think that might be tough. But
Here's
again,
the thing.
Booker of the Year is voted on by Wrestling Observer subscribers.
Right.
So Tony Khan will probably still win it just because that's
the audience.
That's the Smarks kind of prefer the AEW style and the AEW booking. So we'll see what happens.
Here's the thing. There were some legitimately good matches this year. So Tony Khan didn't do a terrible job as far as booking matches goes. And some of the build and some of this, that, the other thing. It's just overall, when you look at the whole year, when you look at everything, it sort of has a downward turn, while the WWE, with the removal of Vince and with Triple H taking power, is sort of seeing a rise. And that's because people want to give Triple H an opportunity to show how different he was from Vince. That was the draw of AEW, was that they were doing something different from Vince, from WWE. Now they've really kind of, as you've said many times, sort of changed into a mini WWE. My God, today with Tony Schiavone, I got heavy WCW vibes. And that's not a great thing, even though obviously Tony Khan is trying to court those elements of WCW, of some of those older shows, but I don't know how wise that is, because now he feels like he's rehashing old shit all the time. He's not in the zone of new, exciting angles. Maybe that's the problem. They need something that's going to be actually interesting to build towards. MJF is good and interesting and certainly the crown jewel of the company, but I don't know that he's necessarily enough to spark outside interest. Hogan was a draw, but the NWO sparked enough interest to ignite an entire generation of viewers even now are influenced by. So, and that all Bischoff did was steal something from Japan.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the Attitude Era was almost entirely stolen from ECW.
Right.
So, as fans, as super fans, as elite marks, as people who have their fingers on the pulse of wrestling, what do you think we should steal from somewhere and make AEW use to be better? What angle? Because like an invasion angle's been done to death. What angle other than Eddie Kittenston? We can't go that route. We've talked about it. We already know he's champion without it. So he did the redemption angle already. No kitten, goddammit.
Bring in the kittens. I don't know. I think they just got to build up. They got to build up a new star, someone to support MJF, and take things to that next level. So, it's like who is that next star right now? It's tough to say. So
here's the thing. What made all of those of us who were fans back in the Monday Night Wars days, you look back at some of those Raws and they're really not that good. There were a few segments and they always contained The Rock and Stone Cold and DX. And the rest of the show was really kind of garbage. So I know part of it is we're looking at it through rose-colored lenses, through the lens of history. I look back at the NWO, and there were times I was so fucking done with them. But the beginning of it, that initial fun enjoyment, like, oh my God, what comes next? I gotta see next week. That comes from doing something unexpected. And AEW doesn't really do a whole lot that isn't out of the, they're not doing anything unexpected. They're not doing anything that isn't safe. They're playing it safe a lot. They're sticking with the champions. They're sticking with their plans. They're gonna wait 6 months till Chris Statlander's back before Jade loses. That kind of stuff. I think a random championship win, something like a Santino Marella, where it's just somebody out of the audience comes in and wins a title, that was unique. So something of that nature, not an Action Jackson or Action Andretti or whatever his name was. He got a freak pin over Chris Jericho, but they did nothing with it. What is needed is something that has never been seen. And that's hard to do. And then you have to be serious about it, get behind it, and push it like crazy. Now, I think they have opportunities coming up to regain the spark because of some of the people who got released from WWE. I hate to say, just hire the cast-offs, but some of the people like Mustafa Ali would be a fantastic addition to the roster because he fits in. He's smaller, fast, agile. He's got a brilliant mind because he can think of a lot of different new things. And I think Tony Khan would listen to him. So I think that would be a great opportunity to really turn things on its ear and kind of come at things from a really new approach. And if you really wanted people to get behind it, give somebody who's coming in just a random, maybe not world title, maybe that international title's got to be where it is. Maybe I'd say TNT, but that thing's already been hot potatoed more than actual hot potato. Anyways, what do you think? What do you think that some of the new people that potentially are coming free agents might help bring that spark?
I mean, not Mustafa Ali or Dolph Ziggler. I mean, I don't know at this point. Like, there's not really any talk of that I'm aware of any new free agents, anyone's contract expiring with WWE that's going to come in and make a difference. It's almost like we've exhausted that with Punk and Danielson and Copeland. It's like, who else is there that's
and
not
Cole
sticking around
and
with
Strong?
WWE? Yeah, I mean, there's. It seems it's just tough. Like AEW doesn't have that. Those older stars that can still go. Like there's not a lot of them, and it seems like they've all moved over to AEW. So it's like there's not much left to pull from there. I think it just comes down to building new stars and having interesting storylines and interesting angles, things that are fresh, things that haven't been done before. I mean, for me, I like the New Japan style matches like we saw last week with Kenny and MJF. It's stuff like that that keeps me invested in the product. I sit through a lot of stuff that I'm not super thrilled with, but stuff like that, like the Kenny MJF match from late week's Collision, like that's the payoff. And then you get your pay per view. At your pay per views, almost all your matches are excellent. They're almost all really high quality, strong style matches. And so it's like that's what gets me through and keeps me invested in the product. So, but I think just to expand that, if you want to be more mainstream, you just have to build those stars that people want to watch every week.
Okay, I hear you about building new stars. Do you think that they've started to be successful? I mean, the Acclaimed were super hot. When the product was super hot, they were fucking they were loud as shit. They started to have the scissoring show up in pop culture references. Has that disappeared? Are football players not scissoring anymore? Are baseball players not doing it in the dugout?
Oh, you had that one football player doing the Daniel Garcia dance, but Garcia seems like he's on the back burner right now for some reason. It's like they can't decide what to do with him. So it's just an example of someone who's starting to gain some momentum, and then he just gets snuffed out because creative just doesn't have anything for him, or he's hurt and we just don't know. So
hurt from doing what?
I don't know.
Don't you have to wrestle in order to be hurt?
Don't know.
I mean, okay.
Sometimes you can get hurt working out.
Yeah, I know.
Something.
I know. I played the video game. I know you can get hurt working out. Actually, what's funny is I've spent a fair amount of time in a gym before, so you wouldn't know it now. But when I was 18, I was fairly healthy.
Yeah,
that's the way life is, right?
Weren't we all?
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. 18, it's easy to feel like you're able to take on the world. Give it about 4 decades, you change your mind. Maybe not 4, close. Anyways, so, the Sheeta match this week with Willow was better than whatever it was against Saraya. I'm not even going to try to explain that one. I love Willow. I thought she did okay against, obviously she wasn't going to win because, God, Sheeta needs to hold on to the title or it's just a joke. There's, I don't know what they're doing with the women's division at all. But, hey, at least there was a segment plus Toni Storm and, whatever.
Yeah, I think we'll see Storm win the belt at the pay-per-view from Sheeta. I thought the Willow match was excellent. I thought the ending was really good. Other than Sheeta's knee strikes need to be a little stronger. They just looked so soft. It's like, come on, if you're gonna win the match with that, if you're gonna win the match with that, make it look like you're knocking her head off, like she did when she hit Storm. Like she crushed Storm. I almost feel like she feels comfortable working with Storm. Sheeta does, because Storm has a ton of experience, and whereas Willow doesn't. So I could be wrong about that. I don't exactly know how many years of experience Willow has, but I would assume Toni Storm is much more experienced than Willow.
Yeah, and no, Willow's absolutely young. She's somebody who was ROH, before ROH collapsed, and I've only got to know her since she started showing up in AEW on Dark, on Elevation, earned her way up. This is another success story. 2023 was her year. She won a title. Very, very unfortunate that it happened to be against Mercedes Moné in a terrible situation, but she started to get a little recognition. She's got a little storyline going on with Julia Hart and Sky Blue. Sky even had her blue mist to counteract Julia Hart and her black mist. So there's at least a little bit cooking with the women there. I'll give them credit for that. House of Black, I don't know what they're doing with them. I just hope they do something because they're cool as hell and they have the potential to draw eyes. And why not run with something that's unique? I was talking about it before. You really want to draw something new. You want to try different, unique. I don't know. I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but this was a fairly standard show. And don't get me wrong, fairly standard for AEW is still pretty goddamn good. But I believe it was Max Power in the 1984 Wonder Woman movie who said, "Life is good, but it could be better."
Right.
So this was good, but it could be better. They ended with a 4-way scissor. I mean, fans go home happy.
Yeah. Yeah, we finally got the MJF scissor. He wore the Scissor Me shirt. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the Acclaimed, but I'm sure people will enjoy it. We'll see if it moves the needle with the ratings. So, although it's a tough week with World Series this week, I don't know if there was a game tonight, but if there was, that's huge competition, especially being later in the series. So,
I mean, yeah, it's World Series. It's definitely a draw. And then, there's also other sports that happen to be on right now. I don't know about Wednesdays, but I do know that NHL, NBA, NFL, and the MLB are all currently on TV this week. So that's all the sports people, and those are huge draws. And when sports people don't have their sports ball to watch, a lot of times their eyes end up on similar physical activity products, thus casual wrestling. So maybe there's an opportunity in the future to grow the audience, but right now there's just a shit ton of competition and AEW is struggling. I want them to do better. I'm a big supporter. That's why we do this podcast. We love the product. We thought it was great. Some of the people that we really like have not been used that great on Dynamite, but the fact of the matter is Collision's better. At least Punk is gone. A couple of good things, right?
yeah, it's been keeping me interested. It's been entertaining. Full Gear doesn't have the build that some of the Full Gears in the past have had, but we'll see what Tony can do to fix that problem over the next couple of weeks.
Well, the big thing that we have is that at least they're building towards something. We have a couple of weeks to give. There's the Devil Mask issue going on with Jay White. I think that's going to be resolved at or before Full Gear. It's entirely possible that, Lawyer Scott was making the point in the Discord that physically Britt Baker looked like the person in the mask. And then there was that segment in a video that they did, the video edit, we posted that in the Discord, where it showed Britt Baker with devil horns. And, I thought that immediately that it looked like Britt. I immediately thought that it looked like Britt. So could it have been Britt plus the Kingdom and Roddy? I don't know. I didn't look at any of the rest of the bodies. The devil mask was so slim that it just, I just get the feeling it's going to be Britt Baker. Why?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I think it would be pretty badass angle if it was Britt and she came back and helped Cole win the title. But again, that could be 6 months from now. But if it was Britt, it would make sense for her, who also needs to rehab. She needs to get her back fixed or whatever. She needs to get healthy. I think she would do a great job being like a heel manager for a Cole. I think that would be a lot of fun. So
I agree. I think that if this ultimately leads to Cole getting a title shot and getting a title win, I would certainly be all for it. There's no question that it would be a pretty awesome way to put what we know as the Golden Couple, because they get all the accolades, put them right back on top, put them head to head against any of the other power couples currently in wrestling. I don't know. Adam Cole is interesting. I don't know how big a draw he truly is. He keeps getting hurt.
He does. He's apparently made of glass.
Yeah, well, I think more and more it becomes an argument for the WWE style that at least keeps people kind of healthy to be able to do it 300 times a year. Because the Japanese style, is so much harder on your body. The AEW style is so much harder on your body.
Is Cole doing anything different than he was? Like, his matches in NXT were similar to what he's doing now. I would say he's more toned down now than his work in NXT.
I would absolutely
those NXT strong style matches can be pretty taxing.
I would absolutely say his ankle injury is 100% never going to happen in WWE because they don't have ramps like that.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it. There's 75 years worth of wrestling production experience in that company. I think there's a reason they don't do it.
Yeah, I thought you were referring to style as opposed to, props like a ramp. But yeah, sure, that ramp turned out to be very dangerous that night.
Yeah. Matter of fact, the last time they did a raised one, Daniel Bryan did an angle where he got hurt on it. I'm not a big fan of having those ramps there. I think it's crappy. I'd rather not see them anymore. Maybe I have bad experiences with WCW and using them because I just use the bigger ramps. This arena was like 10,000 people. Potentially. They couldn't come close to filling it. There's clearly red flags, and they've got to deal with it. But how? I guess that's really the big question.
Yep, lower the price and book better matches.
Lower the price would be good. I think that papering like the old WCW, as a matter of fact, what's funny, I don't want to bring them up, but Jim Cornball said something about the 2-for-1 deal. I didn't have a friend, so I couldn't go who wanted to go. That kind of bullshit. I don't know if lowering the price is necessarily going to get a better audience response. But at least it's not free. I don't know. Again, there were segments where people absolutely responded. Mostly it was MJF. People go crazy for him. But,
right.
There was a lot of segments where it was quiet. And I was like, damn, is it the audience? Is it the audience? Then we get to MJF. I'm like, nope. It's not. It's absolutely how they're responding to the show. And that comes across, and MJF is still a draw. MJF and what he's doing in his matches and his interactions and his threads, right now he's got the Midas touch. He's got the golden touch. What he's doing is spinning straw into gold. Because realistically, he's not doing too much different. It's just he's coming at it from a slightly different angle. So, just need more MJF, really.
Yep. All right, I think that's going to do it for me tonight.
Yeah, I think that is going to take care of it. Let's wrap this bad boy up. If you want, go ahead and join us. Click EliteMarkOrder.com. Click Join the Discord. We would love to have you there. Thank you, JJ, for life.
All right, I stopped the recording in the chat. So we do have that cloud recording if we need it.